1945, the European theater of the Second World War had come to a close. Millions celebrated from New York, London, Paris, and Moscow. Allied victory parades were held across Europe. The Nazi menace had been beaten, and the Soviets held Berlin. Allied troops take positions across the Rhine. For many, this is how they could return to civilian life, for the struggle was over. However, amid the rubble of a broken fascist regime, the Holocaust was discovered. Via death camps, work camps, and ghettos, Nazi Germany had started its plan of racial domination, resulting in the deaths of upward of 10 to 12 million people. Of that, 6 million were Jewish. To the modern day, some doubt this ever happened, or to put clearly, disagree with the fact 6 million people lost their lives to a deplorable state built upon hate. But before I get into the man of the hour, Baptist pastor Steven Anderson, who relentlessly argues with historical accounts from his own cherry-picked sources that disagree with this notion of history, I need to briefly explain the Holocaust and to a lesser extent Nazi Germany. There is much to say and discuss of Hitler's rise to power, from a failed Austrian painter to corporal to Führer of Nazi Germany, but this video does not focus on him. I'm just going to give out the brief facts. He rose to power in 1933 due to President Hindenburg electing Hitler as Chancellor of Germany, and by year's end he would be in full control of the German government, with its parliament obedient to him via the Enabling Act, and after a sketchy fire that singed the internals of the Reichstag, he was leader of Germany, with no one to challenge him. His rhetoric, going as far back as Mein Kampf, was anti-Semitic and very pro-Aryan. To a degree, he foresaw a Europe without Jews, Slavics, or Gypsies, for that matter. His ideals set in stone, in the ways of eugenics. The first concentration camps opened in 1933, too, originally for political prisoners, but over time they would become pivotal to the Holocaust itself, with Jewish businesses, families, and homes being torn apart via laws like the Nuremberg Laws of 1935 and the Kaiserslacht of 1938. By 1942, the final solution would be implemented, with its first stage of death squads known as the Eisengruppen that would follow the main German army in its invasions eastward. The second stage being death camps and work camps. Within these camps, those deemed unfit for manual labor, such as the elderly, pregnant women, and children, would be sent to the gas chambers, or in some cases shot and put in mass graves. The type of gas used at each camp was different, a minor detail, but this will be more important later on in the video, with some using CO2 poisoning, sarin, and also the well-known Zyklon B. Now, with the very minor and abridged history lesson out of the way, I can now get into Steven Anderson's video itself. I will now show about a minute and a half of it, slightly edited clips of it thrown throughout, just to give you his perspective and his baseline source that he uses for all of this information, and how he appears to be a scholarly and well-informed individual, when in reality he isn't quite a historian and posing as an academic.
I examined the facilities, and I made a determination that they were incapable of supporting the use of hydrogen cyanide gas for purposes of execution or otherwise. The reasons that I determined that these facilities were not or never could have been gas execution facilities are stated in my report. And it mainly is concerned with the design and fabrication of these facilities. And I found through these investigations that there is no such a thing as an eyewitness. I have never seen a report that was written by anyone who had a valid description of what could have happened at a gassing. So the long and the short of it is, there are no eyewitnesses.
I would just like to know, the report mentioned here, the Lutheran report, was later to be re-examined and came out as false. A forensic university in Krakow re-examined their claims and pieces of evidence and had realized that they introduced a third variable to the concrete as they were exposed to foreign substances that interfered with the test environment, and the test came out as negative.
Christianity. Now, let me just wrap this up by just recommending a book to you. That's just a good beginner book. You know, I've got some other books here that are more technical, scholarly type books that back everything up and give all their sources and everything. But honestly, if you just want an introduction to this subject, if you just want something that's just easy to read and that just kind of cuts to the chase and gives you a little more detail than I was able to give in this short video, this book called The Holocaust Hoax Exposed by Victor Thorn is just a great beginner book. It's really easy to read. It's not boring. It's very accessible to the layman, where you could just pick up this book and in just a couple hours you could get the gist of what's going on here. And you know, ask yourself how much you really even know about this subject. Do you even know what the word Holocaust means? I'm going to explain that a little bit later in this video. But do you even know the definition of that word? Have you really studied these facts for yourself? Or could you even articulate the official version? Or do you just believe in it because everybody's telling you that if you don't believe in it, you're a racist and you're a skinhead and a Nazi and all these things? Look, there's a reason why it's illegal in 14 countries to even question the events of the Holocaust. Because of the fact that there are a lot of things about the story that don't add up. My point is this: if there was no mass cremation of millions and millions of Jews, then can you really call it the Holocaust anymore? Now again, we're not saying that Jews didn't die in World War II and that Jews were not even murdered in World War II. Lots of people were murdered in World War II. There were all kinds of casualties on both sides. And the thing about it is that just because people were rounded up and put in forced labor camps, that does not mean that they were systematically exterminated and cremated to the tune of 6 million. You know, keep in mind, the United States rounded up Japanese people and put them in a concentration camp, okay? But honestly, these camps, Auschwitz, Treblinka, and others, were probably forced labor camps, not death camps or execution camps.
The book he explains, The Holocaust Hoax, is a very accessible book. It's very easy to get into, however, it lacks sources. And it's very common to see this book seen in Holocaust denial circles, as it's very accessible, very easy to read, but it lacks critical key eyewitness accounts, first-hand sources, and it's mostly filled with the writer's biases and personal opinions. Now, to use the word bias, it could be from their own perspective and how they came to these conclusions, but the way they see history, or the way they want to view history, is to shape into their point of view and how can it fit their narrative, and how can it fit the narrative of the Holocaust didn't happen. They do this by using cherry-picked sources, not seeing the full picture, and not opening up to first-hand eyewitness accounts. Now, whether eyewitness accounts be written in the moment, 20 years, 30, is it a memoir, is it a diary entry, but there's still first-hand sources, and these are critical when painting a picture to see the larger story of it with history, or this event per se. As a lot of historians get caught into the traps of history repeats itself. History is a common narrative of these tropes, I would say, in teaching history. But one idea is central now, I think, going forward as historians, is that we need to view it from all aspects and come with our own judgments detached from what our own personal views are on the subject. And that is how I'd like to end this video on.